Hello and welcome. We'll get started in just a few moments here. Give everyone a chance to finish filtering in. Thanks so much for joining us today. All right. And it looks like that number of folks entering has slowed down. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started here. All right. Well, welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today for day 2 of our webinar series. This is our final day together. And today we are going to dive into some of our favorite tips and tricks in the library reading app, Libby. For those of you joining for the first time today, hello, my name is Joe. I'm here with my teammate Marissa, and we are from Overdrive. Overdrive, of course, are the makers of the Libby app, and you may have even used our original Overdrive app in the past. But so here we are to talk a little bit more in depth on the Libby app. Just some housekeeping reminders before we dive in. Closed captions are enabled for this webinar. They are auto-generated by Zoom, so they are not 100% accurate, but they are pretty darn good. Just if you need to adjust those at all, look for the button that says CC in those Zoom meeting controls, tap on the arrow next to it, and you can adjust from there. If you have questions, you can ask those throughout the entire webinar using the Q&A button, also in those meeting controls. Tap on that, type out your question, and then I will answer it while Marissa is presenting, or we'll save it to answer at the end when we've got some live Q&A time. You can ask questions anonymously if that makes you more comfortable. Excuse me. We are recording our session today, and you'll get an email tomorrow morning from Zoom. This email will be chock full of links. So you'll get a link to the full recording of today, as well as a recording of our Getting Started session. And then we've also included links to our helpful Getting Started PDFs. So this is everything we covered in our Getting Started session broken down into short video clips and help article links, as well as everything we covered today in our Tips and Tricks PDF. And then lastly, just like yesterday, when Marissa gets her iPad connected, Zoom may shrink your display. It doesn't happen to everyone, but if it happens to you, I'll be sending out some quick and easy instructions in the chat. It only takes a few clicks to write yourself. All right, so today we'll be going through filtering and refining your library's catalog so you can find only the books you're interested in. Then we'll talk about creating lists with tags, probably our favorite tip of them all. Then we'll jump into an ebook to show you how you can define words. And then we'll look at making notes and highlights. Great for those of you in school, those of you in book club, if you want to take detailed notes in the book you're reading, or if you're just like Marissa and I and you like to make notes while you read. And with that, Marissa, I will let you get connected here and we'll get rolling.
All right, thanks so much, Joe. Let my iPad do its thinking. There we go. And then I'm going to rearrange my screen here. And then while I rearrange my screen, I just want to give that final reminder about the zoom ratio. This is when it's important that you can see the entirety of my screen. So at the bottom, I have a navigation bar. It has 5 icons within it: search, library, menu, shelf, and timeline. If you can't see those icons, then Joe just put out instructions in the chat for how to change your zoom ratio. And it's just a couple of clicks. So as Joe said, we're going to cover our tips and tricks today, and we're going to start off with how to filter and refine your library's catalog. This tip is all about finding the books that you like faster. So what I'm going to do is I'm starting out on that library tab where we're browsing, and up where we have those filters, I'm going to tap into the Available Now filter. We can see that this filter contains 97,000 titles. And if I were to just browse through this list without filtering and refining, it could take me all day to find a book, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how you can narrow this list down so that you can find the books that you like faster. There's 2 parts to this tip. The first is all about preferences, and that's over on the left-hand side of the screen right now. You can see it in this dark blue bar. Preferences, I mentioned yesterday in our getting started session, are one of the differences between Overdrive and Libby. Preferences are filters that are saved and applied to all lists in Libby. And what that means is once you set your preferences and you apply them, moving forward, regardless of if you open and close Libby 1,000 times, or maybe you shut down Libby and then a month from now you open Libby back up, those preferences are still going to be filtering out your library's catalog. So in what instances might you want to set a permanent filter? Well, if you are someone who is particular about the format that you enjoy your reading in, whether you like to read with your eyes and you don't care for listening, or vice versa, you could set a preference for the format. So if you really love the audiobook format and it's just too hard to read with your eyes anymore, you could set an audiobook format, and that way Libby's only going to show you titles that are in the audiobook format. Now, I like them all, so I'm going to stick with any, but we'll talk about two more here. Language is probably the most popular preference that you can set. I have my language set to English. Much to my high school French teacher's dismay, I could barely remember anything from back then. So I only speak or read in English, and therefore I have an English preference set on my Libby account. That way I'm not going to come across anything written in French or Chinese or Russian. I'll know that I can read it because I have that English preference set. The last preference I'll talk about here is audience. So this is important for anyone who has young kids. If they have their own device, you can set a preference to juvenile and or YA, and that will make sure that they aren't coming across things like 50 Shades of Grey, for example, when they're searching for a book. They'll only see age-appropriate content. All right, so once you set your preferences, I'm just going to stick with my English preference here. I'm going to come down and tap on Apply Preferences. Make sure that if you're on a smaller device like a phone, you might have to scroll down to see that Apply Preferences button, but it is important that you tap on it. And you'll know that you have applied your preferences if you see a number next to that Preferences button there. So I applied one preference, it was my English preference, and therefore I'm seeing that one as my indicator that it is in place right now. So that is the first way that you can refine your searching and your browsing in Libby. Now I'm going to talk about the second way, and this is going to be a temporary filter. So these filters are going to revert back to their default the next time we look for a book. And for this part of the tip, I'm going to give a little prompt here. So let's just pretend that my mom and I are going to go on a road trip here in a minute. And so we need to find an audiobook to listen to on our way. So that's the format that I'm going to look for. My mom loves mystery historical fiction. So that is the subject or genre that I'm going to look for. And then last but not least, I need a new release because my mom reads a lot. And if I go for a new release, then it's likely she hasn't read it yet. So what I'm going to do is just across from preferences, you'll see that refine button. As I mentioned, this is a temporary filter. So these filters are going to revert back to their default. And we will start off with the format. I mentioned I need an audiobook. My mom used to read to me on our road trips, all the Goosebump books, but now I'll let the audiobook do the work. We're going to come back to refine. And this time I'm going to choose my subjects. So as I mentioned, she likes mystery historical fiction. So first I'm going to tap on mystery. You'll notice that this number up here is dropping dramatically. We started out with 97,000 titles. We narrowed it down to audiobooks. Now we're narrowing it down to mystery. I'm down to 2,900. But my mom doesn't like just a mystery title. She likes mystery historical fiction. So I'm going to come back to subject, and now I'm going to choose historical fiction. And you'll see that number has dropped even lower. I'm now at 241. And this list is not a list of mystery titles and then historical fiction titles. It is a list of mystery titles that are also historical fiction titles. And so I point this out so that you know you can find niche subjects in Libby by adding additional subject filters. The sweet spot for this is around 3, maybe 4 you could get away with. But if you add too many subject filters, Libby's just going to return with no results because there aren't very many books that are 5 genres at once, right? So you can find niche subjects if you add those additional subject filters, but I would stick around 3 or 4. Now, I'm going to come back to refine. 241 is a nice number, but I want a new release. So I'm going to come to refine, and this time I'm going to sort my list. And instead of by popularity, I'm going to sort by release date. And that way, the newest books are showing up at the top. And then as we make our way down the list, they will get older and older. So we started out with 97,000 titles, and we have narrowed this list down to 241. It's a really great number, way more approachable than that 97,000. The last part of this tip that I want to show you is for those of you who might go back to the same list again and again. If you're a big genre reader, this might be you. So if you go back to the same list time and time again, you'll notice that you'll see the same books on the first couple pages over and over and over. You got to scroll, scroll, scroll to get past them. I want to show you how you can jump a page, and that way you can just skip over to page 4, for example. So I am going to start off by scrolling, but I'm only going to scroll until I see that page break. So you'll see Libby took a second to load, and now I see I'm on page 2 of 11. Well, across this bar here, what you can do is tap on the page number, and then you can choose which page you jump to. So in this example, let's jump over to page 4. And now Libby has just taken me over to page 4. I don't have to scroll past all the books on page 2 and page 3. So that finishes off our first tip of the morning, how to filter and refine your library's catalog so you can find the books that you like faster. I'm now going to move on to tip number 2. And tip number 2 is all about tags. Tags are my favorite feature in Libby. You'll hear a lot of people who work at Overdrive say that. Tags are a really big upgrade to the Overdrive app because I mentioned yesterday, the Overdrive app gives you a wish list and gives you a history. And in Libby, you have the tagging system where you can name your tags whatever you'd like, and you can create as many tags as you'd like. So you're not limited to just 2 lists. And you can get really creative with the tags that you create as well. So in addition to things like wish lists or maybe books under a certain amount of pages or a certain amount of time, you could also do things like make gift lists. So this is something I do on my Libby account. My father-in-law is an avid reader. Books are just about the only thing I can give him during Christmas and his birthdays that isn't just going to collect dust. And so what I've started doing, because it's really challenging to constantly be trying to find history books that he likes when I'm at the bookstore, what I started doing is throughout the year, if I'm browsing for books and I come across a book that I think he might enjoy, I put it in a little tag for him. And then when Christmas rolls around, I'm at the bookstore, I can open my Libby tag right up, and I already have a pre-made list to choose from. So you can really get creative with the ways that you use tags. And another benefit of tags is for anyone who might be sharing a device with a partner or your children. And that's because you can all create your own wish lists, and you don't have to all add books to the same wish list as well. So let's go ahead. I'm going to show you how to tag a book, how to create a new tag, and then I will even show you how to export those tags out of the app. If you wanted to share that list with a friend or maybe book club, you can do that as well. So let's start off by tagging a title first. Let's say I'm looking for a book for my mom and I, that road trip, and I come across Jade Dragon Mountain here. It looks really good, but my mom's read it already. Typical mom here. So I'm going to come down and I'm going to tag it so I can save it for later. So I'm going to tap on tag. It's the third option that you see next to that jacket cover. And here are all the tag lists that I already have. And I do want to give a little clarification on the difference between regular tags and smart tags. So you'll see there's 3 smart tags. This one is not applicable to you because you do not have magazines in your collection, but the 2 down at the bottom, they are applicable to you. You'll notice they say smart tag here. The borrowed smart tag is a tag that will automatically apply to any books that you borrow in Libby. So Libby has some smarts attached to this tag, and it automatically does an action for you. And this action is it tags the books that you borrow. Right below that, you'll see the smart tag called sampled, and this is going to automatically tag books that you've read or listened to the sample of. I'm going to show you here in a second why those come in handy, but I just want to make, for clarification's sake, smart tags have special abilities because Libby does something for you. Whereas regular tags are tag lists that you create. You name them, you are adding the books to them. So my examples here of my regular tags that I've created are my wish list, my to be read, the cooking list. So I saved some fun recipes in here that I enjoyed, and then beach reads. So let's go ahead and create a new tag for this book to show you that process. I'm just going to tap on new tag. And here we can name the tag. I'm a big genre tagger on like my personal device. I need to be in a certain mood to read a mystery book. And so I'll create a mystery tag. And then when that mood strikes, I'll hop into it and choose a book from it. So I'll type in mystery. We could add a description here. I know what mystery means, so I will not add the description, and I'll just go ahead and tap on create. You can also tap go or enter in your device's keyboard. They all do the same thing. You will know that your tag has been placed because it will show up when you're searching or you're browsing. So in this instance, we're looking at that list of audiobooks, and I tagged this book with mystery, so it's showing up right next to that jacket cover. This particular part of a tag is why I love tags so much, because let's just show you how these are going to show up as we move out throughout this list. So I'm going to start scrolling down. And because my mom's read that already, we haven't found the book I'm going to borrow yet for our road trip. But I come across Dreaming Spies as I start scrolling. This has my borrowed smart tag next to it. And if you're someone who reads so much that you forget the jacket covers, you forget the titles, sometimes the details don't even spark your memory. What's nice is we know that we've borrowed this book in Libby, regardless of if we forgot all that. We see the borrowed smart tag. And so I know I can just skip over this book as I'm browsing because I've borrowed it already. Well, now I come across the conspiracy of us, and that has the sampled smart tag next to it. Except I don't have the borrowed smart tag next to the sampled smart tag. So that means I sampled it and then I never borrowed it. I must have not liked the way that the narrator was speaking, or maybe the writing style just wasn't for me. But something about this book made me not want to borrow it after I listened to the sample. And so I'm going to skip over it as I look for that book and just pass it right on up. Well, now I come across A Fine Summer's Day, and that has my to be read tag next to it. Remember, the to be read tag is a tag I created. That's my wish list. And since I've shown interest in this title and added it to a wish list, I'm going to go ahead and borrow it. I'm not going to waste any more time looking through this list. My mom hasn't read it. It's on my wish list. I'm good to borrow. So that is how you can create a tag, and then what those tags look like when you're searching and browsing. Now I'm going to show you where those tags live in Libby. So if you just opened up the Libby app and you want to jump into a tag and pick a book, what you're going to do is come down to your shelf. And on your shelf up at the top next to your loans and your holds, you'll have your tags. So I have 7 tags that are created. I'm going to tap on tags, and now I can see what my lists are. So I have my mystery tag I just created with you, my borrowed smart tag, beach reads, etc., etc. I'm going to scroll down to my to be read. It has 39 titles in it, and I'm going to go ahead and open it up just by tapping on it. Now, up at the top of your tag lists, you can do some filtering. So if you wanted to filter by available now, you can do so. You could filter by ebook versus audiobook, and you'll find more filters here underneath these 3 lines. And so you could filter by author and title. So all of those great options. I'm going to just tap above it to drop it off the screen. I just wanted to show you what that menu does. And something I want to point out is over on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll notice all of these library cards with plus signs next to them. If you remember yesterday, I said, if the book is on a waiting list, instead of this icon, you'll see the calendar. So this is an indicator of, is it available or is it on a waiting list? But then even better is if you tap on this or the calendar, it doesn't matter which of the icons are there, you can tap on that icon and Libby is going to actually show you the availability of that book across all of your libraries. So I mentioned yesterday, here in Cleveland, we have our city library card, our county library card, and then our state library card. So 3 library cards that we have available to us in Libby. If you add multiple library cards, Libby's going to show you what the shortest waiting list is. Or in this example, you can see my second demo library doesn't even own a copy of this book. And so I like to show off that feature if you do add multiple library cards to Libby and want to find the shortest wait lists. Again, I'm going to, any menu that looks like this, if you just tap right above it or below it, it will drop off the screen. And then the other thing I want to show you here in the tagging tip is this actions button up in the top right-hand corner. If you tap on actions here, you can rename your tag or delete it. I like to point out the delete option for anyone who might not want a smart tag automatically tagging their books. You can go in to that tag and delete it if you'd like. But then I want to show off this option to export your tag. So exporting your tag means you're taking the tag out of Libby and you are sharing that list, whether it's in an email or a text message, or you're taking it offline. So I'm going to tap on export tag. We have a few different options that you can choose from. The most popular 2 are at the top here. Table is going to be if you want to export it into a web page, for example, and then share the link to that web page. Spreadsheet is going to be taking that list offline into something like an Excel sheet, for example. I'm going to do table just for our example today. I'm going to tap on table, and Libby's going to take me to the data export page. So you do need Wi-Fi or cellular data to do this step. Just as an example here, you see that I'm on share.libbyapp.com. That means I'm using the internet. And this is the data export page. Now, once you're on the data export page, you're going to look for the share button. And the share button is going to vary in location based on what web browser you're using. So I'm on an iPad, and so I'm using Safari as my web browser. But if you're using Firefox or Google Chrome or Microsoft Edge, the location of the share button is going to change, but it will look like a box with an arrow pointing up. And I'm going to tap on that icon there. And here you can see I have some options. I could send this list into a text message or an email, or if I scroll down just a little bit here as well, I could print this list out if I wanted to, print out a physical copy to take to book club so everyone could vote, for example. And that is wrapping up tip number 2, all about tags. I know it's a little bit of a long one, but tags, like I said, they're my favorite feature in Libby. You can really do a lot with your tag lists as well. I wanted to mention one more thing about tags is that when you switch over from Overdrive to Libby, if you're using the same library card number that you signed into Overdrive, when you first come into Libby and sign in for the first time, go to your menu, and right up at the top where those in-app notifications are, you will have a prompt letting you know that you can import your wish list from Overdrive into a Libby tag. So you won't lose your wish list if you're coming over from Overdrive. Libby is going to sync that over for you. All you have to do is go to your menu and follow the prompts that she gives you up at the top. All right, that is the last part of the tagging tip. I'm now going to move over to the shelf here, and we're going to talk about our final 2 tips within Pride and Prejudice. So first tip is going to be defining words, and then we'll move on to making notes and highlights. So I'm going to pop into Pride and Prejudice, and I'm going to drop my menus off the screen by tapping in the very center of the screen. And we're going to define a word. So once you choose which word you need to define, I'm going to do consequence here. What you can do is hold your finger on the word until it turns blue. You'll notice I'm not saying tap your finger. That's going to turn the page. I'm saying hold your finger until it turns blue. So my finger is staying on the screen. And now that I see that it's blue, I'm lifting my finger up off the screen. And we see this menu pop up down at the bottom. And we're going to choose the first option, which is define. And when you define a word in Libby, Libby is going to give you the English dictionary definition by default. If you have a different language dictionary downloaded to your phone and it's set to the default dictionary, Libby will instead have it up in that dictionary. But then below the dictionary definition, we also see some synonyms. And then you'll also find topics. Now, what's great about topics in Libby is that they are pulled from Wikipedia. And the reason that that is great is because you can, quote unquote, define proper nouns in Libby as well, because Libby is going to pull Wikipedia page blurbs into this define menu. So this is really great for anyone who reads nonfiction books. I'm a big nonfiction reader, And so sometimes when I'm reading, I might come across a city I've never heard of in a different country, or maybe a famous painting or composer, anything like that. I can define them as I'm reading, and Libby gives me a little Wikipedia blurb about them so I can figure out who they're talking about. So that is a nice perk of being able to define or proper nouns in Libby. And then down at the bottom, you'll see this explore section. If you wanted to go out to the full Wikipedia page, you could do that. You could also Google the term, or you could translate it. So maybe you're reading a book that takes place in France, and there is a sentence in French that they didn't translate for some reason. You could come in and translate that sentence instead. So lots of great features that you could do within the defining feature of Libby. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to tap above the menu. That's just going to drop it off the screen. And we'll move on to our final tip of the day. And that's going to be how to make notes and highlights. And we'll also show you how to export those notes and highlights out of the app as well. So let's say I want to highlight this second paragraph here. I want to talk about it at book club. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the very beginning of that passage. So the word you is what I'm going to start with. I'm moving my mouse slightly to the left here, just so you can see. I'm going to hold my finger on the word you, and it's turned blue. And now I'm going to drag, I'm keeping my finger on the screen. I'm dragging my finger across the screen until the full passage turns blue. And then once that full passage turns blue, that's when I'm going to lift my finger up off the screen. And I see that option to highlight in the menu that has dropped or popped up. We do have a few different colors here. If you like to be organized, I'm very type A, so I like to organize my notes and highlights. I'll choose pink today. And now that my highlight is placed, what I can do is tap on the highlight itself. And now Libby's giving me an option to make a note. So if I want to, put a little clarification of what I want to say at book club, I can do that. I have typed in full paragraphs here in this menu. I'm just going to do this as a note for the sake of demonstration, and I'm not going to trash it. I'm going to just tap right below that menu to drop it off the screen. And now I'm just going to page forward here. So let's say we get farther in the book, and now we want to reference a note that we made earlier. What you can do is tap in the center of the screen, and then up in the top right-hand corner here, you'll see those 3 bookmarks sitting in a row. That is the icon that you want to tap on if you want to see all of your notes and highlights that you've made within the book. So let's go ahead. I want to reference this note that I made about Mr. Bingley. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tap on it. Libby's taken me back to that page. Now I can see the full passage that I highlighted. And if I wanted to see the note that was accompanying this passage here, I could tap on the highlight and my note will drop down. Now, just like all of these menus I've talked about, you just tap below it and it will drop off the screen. Now, sometimes you'll come into a book, you'll make all your notes and highlights, and then it returns on its due date. And it's a popular book, so it's now has a wait list, and book club's coming up, and you're like, oh no, I don't know if I'm going to be able to borrow that book so I can see my notes and highlights in time for book club. Well, we have 2 options for you. If that book has returned to the library and you can't borrow it again, what you can do is you can go to the details page of that book to find your notes and highlights. So let's show you those steps. I'm going to leave this book first. I'm going to tap in the middle of the screen, but since I have that highlight there, I'm actually going to tap right above it instead. So instead of bringing up my note, I'm bringing up the menus, and then I'm going to tap on back. So when you want to find your notes and highlights from a book that you've borrowed, you can go to the search icon in your navigation bar. This is going to be the fastest way to find the book, and type in the title of the book that you're looking for. And this is another reason I love those borrowed smart tags, is because I know I've borrowed this book with that indicator. So this is definitely the version of the book that I made my notes and highlights in. I'm going to tap on the jacket cover itself to view the details page. And now that I'm on the details page, I see the reading journey. Your reading journey starts as soon as you borrow a book, and then it captures all of the actions that you have taken with that book. So I'll tap on reading journey. And here you can see those actions. So since February of 2021, I've picked up this book 6 times. It's my demo book, so I've only read it for 5 minutes. And so it shows you all of that information. Up at the top with that actions button, this should look familiar from our tagging tip. You can export your reading data. So we talked about exporting your tags. This is going to export your notes and highlights. Same steps that I showed you with tags, except it's going to be your notes and highlights. So that is the first way you can find your notes and highlights if the title is not available to borrow. If you scroll down just a little bit on this screen here, we're still on our reading journey. You'll also see the timeline for the title, and here your highlights will be listed out. So you could tap on an individual highlight here. You'll see your passage that you highlighted up at the top, and then right below it in quotations, you'll also see your note. So if you just wanted to quickly reference a note or highlight, that is a good option as well. And that wraps up all of our tips for today. So I'm going to hand things back over to Joe to get us into our next steps.
All right, hitting all the wrong buttons. All right, thank you, Marissa. I am so excited we got to share those tips today. Hopefully you all have been enjoying them. We've had some good questions come through. And now we are going to dive into our mini quiz. And then with the time that's remaining, we'll answer some of your questions live on the screen here. So for our first question, just like yesterday, these questions are complete. Your answers are completely anonymous. Question will pop up on the screen. If you only wanted to temporarily filter a list or search results, which type of filter would you use? Refine or preference? Which is our temporary option? And I'll close this in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. So if you want to set a temporary filter on your list or your search results, you are going to, let me just restart that. You are going to tap on that refine button. This will allow you to do a lot of different kind of ways to sort down, excuse me, or narrow down a list. Like in this case, we are going to add a romance subject. So all of what's available in this result will show us only those romance titles. If you want to set something permanent that sticks and stays across the whole entire Libby app, that's when you go into preferences. And the things you do here are things like set that language preference, so only the language you can read in. You can also set things like age preferences if you're handing, or like age ranges if you're handing a tablet over to a kiddo. Great work, everyone. For question 2, true or false, you can add multiple subject filters to find niche subjects in Libby. All right, and I'll close this one in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And y'all got it correct. The correct answer is true. Like Marissa showed us earlier, you can add multiple subjects to find those niche results in Libby. So we just go back into that refine menu, and then we can tap back into subjects. And so we've got romance currently. We'll add fantasy. So now we are looking at all titles that are both fantasy and romance. So this is a great way to really narrow down and find those books you're interested in most. Remember, we recommend sticking to 2 or 3 subject filters. Anything more than that, you're going to get really limited results or maybe no results at all. Okay, question number 3. Let's dive into those tags. What are the 3 types of smart tags? So these are those tags with special abilities: borrowed, sampled, notify me, to be read. And we'll close this in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, looks like we tricked a couple of you on this one. So remember, all of your tags live on your shelf. If you want to see them, you just tap on that stack of books and tap into tags. So we've got the borrowed smart tag, which tags any book that you've borrowed automatically, so you know what you've checked out in the past. Then notify me, you won't see at your library currently because you don't have magazines, but this will play a part in the near future. And then last is that piece of cake. That is for anything you have sampled. So these are all those tags that exist or are kind of waiting for you to use in Libby. Our to be read list is something that we created. It's just a regular tag. It doesn't have any special abilities. Now, I could see where there might be where the trick comes in on this one. If you are an Overdrive app user, you can import in your wish list. That is technically a smart ability, but the tag itself is just, it doesn't have anything special. It's just pulling over those books from Overdrive. And if you're starting fresh with Libby, you won't have anything created for you. You'll have to make your own TBR. And our last question: where can you find your notes and highlights after a title is returned on its due date? So do you go in your tags on your shelf, in the reading journey on the book's details page, or in your timeline? Where do those notes and highlights live? And I'll close this one in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. So great work, everyone. There's a lot of ways you can get to where you need to go. But where you need to get is to that details page. So you can use that magnifying glass to search for the title you're looking for. You could dive into your tags on your shelf and go into that borrowed smart tag. You could scroll through the timeline, but you just have to get to that details page. So here we'll tap on that jacket cover, and then we'll open up the reading journey. If you need to do a quick at a glance, you can go to the timeline for the title and tap on a highlight. It will show you your full highlight and your full note. If you want to export your notes and highlights, there is an actions button up at the top of this page. And that wraps up our mini quiz. Great work, everyone. We've got about 15 minutes left. So if you have any questions, please feel free to send those through now. And Marissa will get her device back up on the screen. I wanted to shout out the question we had earlier. Can you eliminate a book from the search list if you've already read it, if it has the borrowed smart tag by it, or if you sampled but not checked out? I love this because it gives us a couple things. So, unfortunately, when you're filtering your search results, you cannot filter by tags in that result. So you can't like have it not show your borrowed or your sampled smart tags. But this is where I get to call out, if you have a feature that you'd like to see in the Libby app, you can always send a suggestion directly to our folks here at Overdrive. So you go into the menu, and then under the help and support section, tap on Get Some Help. And then from here, all you have to do is where it says common solutions, if you scroll down just a little bit, you'll see the suggestion box. So this is where you can put ideas for the app for the future. So this is where you could come in and type in, I'd like to be able to filter out books that I've borrowed when searching, and that will send through. And we recommend if anyone is interested in this, you all submit, because the more requests, the more the developers go, oh, this is something folks are interested in. So if you see something, go ahead and suggest it. They love to hear from you.
Can I
Just to
add
cap.
one?
Oh
Can I
yeah.
add one more thing to that, Joe? Sorry to interrupt you, but I did want you to move on to William's
Mm-mm.
question before I got to mention it.
I was just, before you do that, just a reminder, the suggestion box is only for app suggestions. Don't recommend books there.
Yes, your library has control of what books are available in your collection. When you write into the suggestion box, you're talking to Overdrive technical support specialists. Good point. Sorry for interrupting you. I did want to let you know about a similar but different feature. So you can't dismiss or hide any books that you've borrowed or you've sampled, but something that you can do on the library tab where you're browsing for books is if you come across a list that you know you're not interested in, let's scroll down here, like celebrity book club picks. Maybe you're not into celebrity book club picks. There's a little minus sign over here on the right side of the screen. If you tap on that, you can hide that list. And what it'll do is it'll hide this list. And then at the bottom of the screen, a new list is going to take its place. So you can hide entire lists from your curated collections on the library tab if you're not interested in those. So just wanted to point that feature out, Joe. I'll let you move on to William's question.
No, that was a great point. I didn't even think of that. Great feature. And then William asks, can I search for text in the book? Yes, super exciting. You can search for words, short phrases. We're just going to open up Pride and Prejudice here, since we've got it already downloaded on our iPad. And remember, when you open the book, these menus will be at the top and bottom. Usually you just kind of dismiss them right away by tapping in the center of the screen. But in this case, we want that magnifying glass in the upper right corner in between our appearance and bookmark icons. And from there, you can just search within the book. So let's search for Bingley. Oh, that works too, Jane. Makes sense. I should have left Pride and Prejudice entirely to you, Marissa. So this will pull up anytime that Jane is mentioned in the book. So you can do just a single word, you can do multiple words. I like to do this if I'm trying to pull a quote out of a book and I can only like vaguely remember it and I didn't highlight or bookmark that page. I'll just try my hand at some searches. But then, yeah, you can scroll through. This will show you every chapter that it pops up. And just like with those bookmarks that Marissa showed us earlier, or those notes and highlights, if you want to hop to that specific page, just tap on it. So this will take us to chapter 3. And our search bar is kind of hiding it at the bottom, but you can see where Jane is highlighted right there. Yep. And that search bar is also nifty because you could, in theory, just kind of jump to every different page that said Jane. This does time out at, I think, 99 results, but I don't remember. It might be different now than it used to be. Great questions. Any other questions about Libby? Anything you've experienced in the last day since you started using Libby? Or anything for the future? Just wanted to remind everyone, you will get that email tomorrow from Zoom that will include a link to this full recording. The email, like I said on the top, will be chock full of links. So you'll have the link to our Getting Started session from yesterday, our tips and tricks session today, and then those getting started in tips and tricks PDFs. So you've got all sorts of resources. And then remember, if you have any questions after we end today, just reach out to our technical support team directly. You can do that from the Libby app by going into the menu and then under help and support, tap on get some help. Go into that search bar and take a shot at what you are looking for. Maybe you want to, um, I'm not going to guess what Marissa's typing. I'll just let her type. Maybe you want to return a book early. Okay, that's what I was going to say. We're in sync. You can type in return, go for returning books, and then you'll see some help article steps there. If that's not what you were looking for, you can just go down to the bottom where it says ask our support team. And then you'll see this page where you can reach out if you were experiencing a problem or a bug in the app, if you just have kind of a general question or you want some more info. And then you can also use this space to submit ideas as well. The suggestion box, if you know you're going in like, I haven't found it, you can always use that, but you can also do an idea here as well. Our folks are based out of Cleveland, Ohio. They will be available every day of the week for you. They do all of their work via email, and they will get back as soon as they can.
I always like to mention double check your email address. So
Yeah.
Libby's going to have you enter your email address for the response and double check that, because if you have a typo, maybe it says at Gmail instead of at Gmail,
Mhm.
that is just going to bounce right back to our technical support specialists and you'll never get the response. So definitely double check your email address.
Definitely. Yeah. And since, we don't kind of store any of your private information on our end, there is no way to connect the email address you use to Libby other than when you type it in. So our support folks can't get to you. So make sure you just double check your email.
And that leads into another, if you ever have trouble with your library card number or your PIN, Overdrive does not store that information anywhere for you. They can't change your PIN or anything like that. So anytime you have trouble with your library card number and your PIN, reach out to the library itself. They will be able to help you.
Yeah, two of the things we truly can't do for you. We can't know your email or know your PIN, but other than that, we've got majority of the answers when it comes to Libby. Do we have access to our list of books read? No, we do not. That is all specific to your device.
They will only be able to see what books you have borrowed at that moment, and that's just so they could troubleshoot at the time, but no history or anything like that.
Right. Just basically what's active on your card currently. No past info, no tag info, just that if you've got 6 books checked out right now, we'll be able to see that. Well, great. Thank you all so much for joining us today and yesterday to talk about Libby. We hope you got some great answers today and some helpful steps to enjoy reading and listening in the library reading app Libby. We appreciate you taking the time to join us today. And of course, remember, look out for that email tomorrow around this time with all of that wonderful follow-up info. If you've got any questions or need any assistance, reach out to our tech support team directly, either within the Libby app, or you can visit our Libby Help website, help.libbyapp.com. Thank you all so much for joining us today, and happy
Happy
reading.
reading.